Hello everyone, my name is Ashant Khosla and I am the founder director of the Typecraft Initiative and an associate professor at UPS Dehradun. My talk today is Desifying Design Education, Embedding Indigenous Maker Practices in Design Pedagogy. And I'd like to thank SADEA for inviting me here, as well as for you guys to listen to my thoughts and views in this presentation. I will be giving a brief introduction and then talking about the formation of design pedagogy in India and its impact. And I will explain what I mean by desifying design education via my MFA design thesis. Uh, and I will end with the Typecraft initiative as well as the insights I've gained from working with craftspeople over the years that can be brought into the design pedagogy. So this paper examines, highlights, or I should say insights from my collaborations with craftspeople with whom I construct letterforms and typefaces based on their crafts. Um, Central to this is the emphasis of alternate making processes, such as creating without preliminary drawing, which foreground tacit knowledge, intuition, and context-specific practices. Ultimately, the paper advocates for integrating indigenous methodologies to foster more locally grounded, critically engaged, and diverse design futures. These engagements are then brought into the classroom via workshops with design students from around the world. The formation of design pedagogy in India and its impact can only be highlighted through, I guess, NID, the National Institute of Design, because even though it was set up in the 60s, it's had a huge impact and continues to have an impact on design pedagogy in India, both positively and not so. Um, the Eames report by Ray and Charles Eames really focused on the inclusion of socioeconomic and cultural concerns specific to the country. But many of the faculty that were, part of NID were trained in Europe, and they brought in back a very heavy dose of European modernism that tended to exclude, looking at indigenous sources and crafts, and focused on design as a service to industry. And this sort of division of the arts is, as we know, a post-industrial and colonial construct, but it got reinforced in design pedagogy. Until today, craft is seen something relegated to the village, traditional and poor, and certainly not really part of design pedagogy when it comes to the visual communication and graphic design. And so this clash in ideologies between a largely Western definition of design, which espouse precision, uniformity, consistency, and minimalism, versus the more traditional definitions of pre-industrialized craft-based design, which wasn't really part of design pedagogy in India and still is on the kind of outskirts. And this lacuna is what led me to come up with the idea of a new design program called DESI, Design School India, during my MFA design thesis at School of Visual Arts in New York way back in 2004-5. So DESI is not just the first four letters of design, but it also is something that represents the idea of the local or the vernacular. The idea of representing the visual identity in vernacular and folk art forms was to emphasize the importance of so-called low art, but also address the cultural and geographic diversity of the country and bring these values into mainstream design education. Additionally, instead of thinking in terms of a unified visual identity like many corporations do, here I'm proposing a more humanized way of looking at design, allowing for variation and complexity. So the thesis addresses contemporary and localized concerns, especially those related to indigenous traditions, visual culture, and social issues from caste to poverty and even illiteracy. The mantra was designed in the Indian context, that is designed for social needs of the country, as well as addressing the rich cultural heritage within the curriculum. So the Tycraft initiative continued where Desi left off, and Aggie Toppins has generously quoted that Tagore's ideas, and some of those in the India report, echo in the Typecraft Initiative, um, which I kind of agree with. I mean, it was established in 2012 with the aim to really create greater exchange between mostly urban designers and rural craftspeople. So it's about creating dialogue, collaboration, and mutual respect between these groups. Crafts is the largest employer in India after agriculture, and I saw this as an important step, for design to actually engage with craft beyond just as a visual inspiration, but also to learn from the methodologies used in crafts and have a more collaborative back and forth. And this is where our workshops with crafts people are super important. And basically, it allows us to work with the community in a more equitable manner. It allows them to explore designs of their crafts that they don't often have time to do because of the constraints of the commercialization of craft today. And it's basically a way to not only explore new designs, but also for designers to understand craft in a more deeper sense than we do right now. And these, basically certain aspects of our workshops I felt could be brought into design pedagogy, both as learnings from how typecraft workshops are conducted, but also learnings from the way the community themselves work. And these are the insights I'm going to briefly talk about. So the first one is direct making, or working without sketching or drawing. And so craft people tend to make directly, right? Especially in terms of embroidery, patchwork, versus designers who tend to plan, conceptualize, and then come up with sketches and further refinements. Here I'm proposing looking at craft methodologies which are very material based processes and which can free designers from the constraints of the digital world and allow new pathways of working, not just in terms of letter forms, but in other forms as well. The second insight I would like to share is what I call decode, recode, so to explore how to decode something as complex as a craft and as complex and layered, and be able to reform that or transform that into a new avatar, such as letter forms or typeface. And due to the materiality of certain crafts, especially textile ones, we mimic the craft using paper so that we can create many iterations, as is the case in design in general. Many crafts, such as soof embroidery, are based on a system, such as right angle triangles used in different sizes. And this is the kind of code that enables the construction and of the various forms of soof. This is brought into the classroom as part of a learning for designers to understand also the material constraints of each craft, which vary greatly from one craft to the other, and affect not only the scale in which that craft can be worked on, but also its shape and how that craft is changing over time due to the introduction of, say, synthetic threads, et cetera, the plastics and mass production, how that impacts scale and other aspects. But even then, designers find it quite complex to mimic these crafts. Although they understand various formal qualities, they don't get understand the nuances of the working of the craft, and that could be a very interesting insight into design pedagogy. Number three is embracing complexity, so being able to make take complex crafts and actually make them legible into letter forms and typefaces to match the visual DNA of the craft, right? So the language of the craft. So it needs to be functional, legible, but based on nuanced complexities of the craft. And any subtle change in the design means the work is no longer coherent to the community as part of their visual identity. Uh, Tendency of designers is to kind of simplify and uh, over complex things, and this is kind of going counter to most design pedagogies in this way. Lastly, I would say that the idea of exploring uncharted areas of type beyond it being seen visually or read textually, instead where typefaces become receptacles of culture. And here we see the Bega tattoo typeface being that we made, which contains actual tattoo motifs of the indigenous community, which are revealed when you type them. Um, in conclusion, I would like to say that can our future be handmade? We need to see craft not just as a means to create products, but as a rich reservoir of cultural heritage and knowledge that can be learned from and used in novel ways in design pedagogy. In the world of AI, we need craft more than ever. And so I propose a framework for desifying design education, drawing from the embodied, process driven, and often nonlinear methods of craft practitioners, which are approaches that differ sharply from modernist colonial legacies shaping most contemporary design schools today. Thank you very much. And I'd also like to thank the craftswomen and men that I've worked with over the years. Shukriya. Thank you for your time.